Hi, so I see slowly everyone is joining, and I will ask you to turn on your cameras. It will be really nice to meet each other on the first day. Hey, so we are 7 now, and I think we are expecting to be 13 or 14 in total, right? So let's wait maybe a couple of minutes more. I hope you're having a great day and ready for new information and for new insights for your business and personally for yourself. All right. All right. Couple of minutes more. All right. I will just wait a little bit longer. Maybe while we are waiting, last couple of people, I will tell you that right now I'm based in Barcelona, Spain, and it's really cold here. So yeah, it's all interesting to see how the cyclone is changing. And this winter, it's very snowy, not in Barcelona, but everywhere around. So it's very unusual climate conditions here.
Very interesting.
Same for Moscow.
Also a lot of snow.
Yeah.
Yes, we have -20 in a couple of days. I believe in Spain it is a bit of warmer.
Well, it is, of course, always relevant, but still for us is unusual. By the way, I would like to ask those whose names are written in Russian language, please change it to Latin so everyone could read it. All right, so are we all here? Do you think we can start? Roman, what do you think?
Think so.
Yeah?
We can start.
All right, so it's my pleasure, as I already told you, to open this school, and it's very exciting time for me because it's a very important global movement. And by creating this school, we also, our experts and administration team, would like to contribute to global sustainability. So to work with you, it's our opportunity to make our contribution to these global changes. For the beginning, I will share the presentation and I will tell you briefly the structure of today's work. For the warm-up, I will give you some introduction and then we will have some time to actually meet each other and introduce. So we will have this time, but just a little bit later, it will be already a part of our group activity and brainstorming. I made it especially not in the beginning of the class, so you will warm up before starting the second part of the class. And during my presentation, I would be really thankful to you if you could you keep cameras on, because it's really help for my motivation that I'm not alone in my home apartment. And now I'm sharing the screen. Just a second. All right, we will try in this way. So today's class will be about the agenda for sustainable development. And in the beginning, before coming to the topic, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ekaterina Markelova, and I have a long journey coming to the sustainability field. And this is started when I was born in Russia by the river Volga. So I was always attached to the environmental questions, and that's what inspired me to become environmentalist. So I obtained my diploma in industrial ecology in Russia, in Moscow, and then I decided to narrow down my scientific understanding of biogeochemical cycles. So I went to Germany, where I became a research assistant. And today, during presentation, I will even show you one photo from my lab work from Germany. So from Germany, later on, I decided to go for a PhD, and I ended up doing a double PhD in 2 countries. So my degree is in Earth, Environment, and Universe, and I had been working in 2 universities, University of Waterloo in Canada and University Grenoble in France. And after getting this scientific degree, I was working in the laboratory and became an expert in biogeochemistry. And that's the reason why I am here now in Spain, because I was invited by consulting company to help with strategic development of the companies in terms of their environmental impact. And right now I'm also the professor of ecology and sustainability at Samara University, where based this school. And not long ago, I became the certified educator of National Geographic on the topic of climate change. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. I love brainstorming and discussing this hot topic. And finally, very lately, I became a member of Women for Climate Association. And I was participating in the competition for women who would like to change the world by doing business. So that's how I came to sustainability. And of course, sometimes people ask me, you're environmentalist, how come you belong to sustainability field? And I see my contribution as environmental aspect. And of course, sustainability means a lot and sometimes means very different things to different experts and politicians. So that's very important to get clear what exactly it means in order to set reasonable goals. Because today at the class, you will see not only ambitious about the program, but also the drawbacks and unfortunately some misconceptions that are leading to the way the world as it is now. So we will find some opportunities where it can be improved. And the program today is the first, the first part will be about 25 minutes, so maybe half an hour. We will speak about Sustainable Development Agenda. Many of you have heard about it. Maybe someone didn't hear. So it is very important that everyone will be at the same stage at this school. As I mentioned, it's not a very classical sustainability school, and almost 80% of our experts have a very profound scientific background. So from this point of view, we will look at some illusions or misconceptions about sustainability and climate conventions. And we will take a look at some examples. And by the end of the first part, we will think why business often gets sustainability wrong. And this will lead us to the group activities, where we will discuss what it means for you, and maybe we can add something to the list that you will see during this presentation. Then we will have a break and continue with the third part, where we will set the big picture, new goals for new growth. We will identify what is growth and what are the limits beyond this. And of course, it will be a question of what is happening right now, today in the world. maybe the news is covering only one aspect of our life, but not necessarily what is required for sustainable development. We will speak briefly about planetary boundaries, donut economics, and finally look at what is beyond the sustainable development. And I will just share a couple of words about the regenerative development. I want to mention that if you haven't heard many words from this list, don't panic, because if it is something important, you will hear about it during the entire school. So some information will be not repeatable, but you will hear more and more concepts about the same ideas from lecture to lecture, from class to class. So don't be scared that everything that you have to understand has to be acquired only today. It's a journey, and actually it's a life journey. So we are just showing you the opportunities and the picture where you can start your personal journey, how to make your life and business sustainable. I am playing with my preview. All right, wait a second. So, agenda for sustainable development. And here I would like to start with a short history and to say that, of course, it's not that new as we tend to think. The sustainability agenda first time was officially written already in the scientific report, Brundtland Report in 1987, with a beautiful slogan, "Our common future, from one Earth to one world." So it's been already almost 33 years of the political attention to the question that the world is not sustainable as it is right now. And in 2000, there have been a meeting between United Nations, and the key question was mainly about the poor nations. So that time they didn't concern about the environmental aspects or economic profits. At that time, the key goal was to eliminate the global poverty. And these Millennium Development Goals were set in 2000. Later, in 2012, again, United Nations decided to update the scientific understanding of the sustainability. So they already included the concept of planetary boundaries. And that's how now we have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And they cover different aspects. But normally we tend to not separate, but distinguish them into three values, like environmental valuable, natural environment for everyone, social and economic. And sometimes it is important to understand that these sustainable goals are interconnected, so that, for example, climate action, the Sustainable Development Goal 13, at the first, we may think that it relates only to environmental aspect. But if we think nowadays, there is a lot of migration due to climate conditions, and such it is becoming a social aspect as well. So it's really hard to say where is this line between these environmental, social, and economic aspects. And it is really important to keep in mind that. Because sometimes we can see these structures where the Sustainable Development Goals are defined per economic, society, and biosphere, which is nice to remember that we have different aspects. But still, it's a little bit misleading that they are so interconnected. Here is the just the definition. What is it, sustainable development? Before we are going into tools and methods, let's agree on what it means for all of us. And the most common definition comes from the very first report, that sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It's a little bit confusing, but actually what it means is that we need to live the way that would not compromise the future generations, but it will also provide all the conditions for the present society. So what is also important is that development is, it's a journey. It's not just a yearly goal that the company can set, but it's a journey through the whole life of the company. And the attempt is to improve social and economic achievements, but also remembering that we are living and existing within our environment. And right now, I would like to stop screening and would like to ask you raise a hand for those who was born after 1987. Okay, I see some hands. All right. All right, so for those who was born after this year, and this year is important because this was the year of first official report, Brundtland report, when it was said that we shall consider not only our well-being, but also future generations. So all of you who rose the hand, you're our future generation. So all the attempts are made is for you and for your families. And for those who are a little older, it is made for our families and for our kids. So this is so relevant that sometimes we forget about it. But basically, we are the next generation for whom all these political efforts being made. And here I wanted to say that governments have already agreed to the Sustainable Development Goals as a global strategy to achieve this global sustainability. And it's time for business to take action. No surprise, we all hear that business has not only challenges, but of course opportunities. And United Nations Secretary General, he says that these opportunities and success, they depend on the scale of ambitions and goals that companies set, and also the way how they report their results. So that we need the transparency of these results. First of all, to be sure that all the honest measures are taken for sustainability, but not for greenwashing. And secondly, when we have transferable results, it's inspiring for our investors, it's inspiring for other business companies, it's inspiring for our clients to change the attitude, which is important for a cultural shift. And we will speak about it a little later, why technologies and business itself is not enough, why we need also to make changes in our culture and consciousness. And so when we see that there is a huge opportunities for business, it's basically right now, today, I think everyone will agree that together we have lots of opportunities to make changes. So what we need is just to find correct tools and to set reasonable goals. And once we have it, investors, governments, and civil society all is looking to pay for your products, to invest in your ideas. It's now a trend when we really have to show or demonstrate that we are ready to cover their expectations. So at one moment, it pushes the rank to higher responsibility of the business. And at the same time, it provides many opportunities. So what I have said so far, it was one story of the sustainable development. And since this is not the regular sustainable development strategy school, it is based at the university, and we have a scientific core beyond this sustainability understanding. So I want to go a little bit deeper and challenge the sustainable development agenda as it is now. And I would like for you to become also very skeptical and critical, because I think this is a very critical way of thinking is what we need to really see changes. So from now on, let's see another side of sustainable development agenda. Not yet. Still here, I wanted to show that there are financial opportunities for business to grow within this sustainability development agenda. And we see that there is a global growth in the investments. So just over 6 years, for example, in Europe, the investments are doubled. And over the same time in Japan, they're increased by 200 times. So there is a positive trend for business to make their statements on the sustainability. And there are, of course, already results and international ranking system to see if your business is sustainable enough, or to answer the question, is my business green enough? Because sometimes it's called going green, but it doesn't mean that it concerns only about the environmental aspects, not at all. Going green, it has a broader meaning, and it covers, of course, resource management, but goes beyond to financial management, employee management, and creating the clean revenue. And you can see the different rankings over international statistics, that there are biggest, most sustainable companies in the world. And they are very different. It's not only someone who is producing products, it's also, for example, food and chemical agents production, or petroleum, or communications equipment, or sometimes it's software, banks. So it's all the variety of businesses that you can imagine. And it highlights that whatever business you are doing, you have your role in the global sustainability. And I think now it's time to move to the dark side of the sustainability. Yes, so this part I call illusions about sustainability, because what we can see is that this year, it was a very challenging year for entire world due to pandemic situation, COVID-19. And scientists say that it was the world's biggest experiment on all three aspects: environmental, economic, and social. There have been never such kind of experiments on scale before in the human history. And what we can see as a result of this pandemic situation is that some business is really unsustainable at its base. For example, in the States in 2020, many buildings were found to be energy inefficiently. And even though employers were working from home, from distance, the huge buildings, they were still running. They were consuming 80% of regular energy consumption. And it was because of the energy emergency lighting and elevators and heating and ventilation and other systems. So what to say is that we all heard about this concept that working from home this year probably helped to at least help with environmental situation, right? But unfortunately, it was not always true, even though it was a remote work. Also, what we saw, it was increased food waste, and there were some problems with food supply chains, so that every small shop recognized that it cannot ask to deliver the supplies to its shop. And basically, when you are locked down, you cannot use your transport system. But it also caused some benefits, so that a few small shops, they decided to hire, for example, one big truck to deliver all the suppliers. And it means that this sharing economy, where we can share, for example, transport for our business, is already started taking place just because of this global experiment. But as a matter of fact, not many companies already there and ready for sharing economy. There are some also other benefits, there was a decrease in emissions due to less use of transport. And as I already mentioned, a lot of workers were working remotely from home, and this was thankful to digitalization. However, we are not sure if it was a good for environmental situation or not, and we will see it in a while. But what to say about economic unsustainability that was during this year? I think, again, a lot of business companies realized that they are very unsustainable. And from the social point of view, there were big eye openings, not only because we realized that we are social creatures, that we need society to live, we also need nature to thrive. And like never before, human realized that our physical and mental health depends on the nature, that landscape makes us joy, or for example, when we go hiking or walking, we have a healthy lifestyle, or we have improved respiratory diseases or health conditions when we go out. We have a lower stress of our emotions, and we have a lower risk of obesity. And please remember that, because we will also speak a little bit about obesity today. But in general, we have improvements in mental health due to um, being surrounded by nature. And this time we realized it like never before. Um, so I said that this year was easy on our activities on the transport system, or for example in the buildings, but how it reflected in our climate situation. What we can see so far is unfortunately that this year we have the extreme temperatures everywhere on land, sea, and especially in the Arctic. And here on the map on the right corner, you can see the temperatures. This is not the temperatures today. This is the difference between temperatures as it was pre-industrial time and nowadays. And we can see that it is changing differently in different parts of the globe. But more impact is happening in the Arctic. Also, we can see that this year we had wildfires in Australia, Siberia, and other regions. We had hurricanes, we had floodings, and basically this year is considered hotter than any year ever measured before, according to World Meteorological Organization. So on one hand, we thought that this global experiment with lockdown, with not using our cars as often, we would expect some changes in the climate, but we haven't seen them. And what is the reason for that? Is it not enough? Or maybe what we are thinking, the causes of the problems are not the real causes? And here I would like to show you the graph. Some of you may have seen this. This is the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And you don't have to be chemist to remember only one single thing about carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a gas, and actually it's oxide. So this is a chemical formula that means that it is very stable in our environment. For example, organics, they're unstable and they can be degraded by themselves. But in case of carbon dioxide, it cannot be degraded in the atmosphere because there is oxygen. It can be degraded, for example, deep in the soil, but not in our atmosphere. So it means that once it was emitted from all kinds of human activities, it will stay there forever unless it will go to the ocean, but it won't be a chemical reaction. It will be just a mass balance. So it is important to understand that what is emitted is not going to be degraded. And on this graphic, you can see the concentration, which was always fluctuating. So it's totally normal for for our nature to be dynamic because it's alive. And its dynamics are being observed over almost 1 million of years. And the highest CO2 concentration was 300 ppm, which is milligrams per liter, about 300,000 years ago. So when the last time it occurred, people started worrying, like something is going wrong, that we never had such high concentrations of this gas in the atmosphere. And this is the same graph, but if we focus on this jump, what just happened recently, we will see this image. So it's for these 2000 years, and what we can see that 300 ppm was achieved in the year 1900. And since then, it was decided that this moment will be taken as a baseline to compare if the climate is changing, if concentration is changing, and everything is changing because of the human activities or just natural dynamics. So this time was taken as a pre-industrial time, and the change in time was 0. I'm just gonna to explain you because sometimes we hear about agreements to stay below 2 degrees or 1 degree, what it means. Not everyone knows, but for you is important to understand these fundamentals. So this temperature was this temperature was set as a 0 degrees. And since then, in 1995, there was a first political, I would say, gathering with scientists and politicians, where it was obvious that human activities are causing changes in the environment that could be detrimental. So that they signed the report and believed that it was a great success because it was an international report. And an interesting fact that it was in Berlin, and it was, well, I will remember the name of the politician and will tell you a little later. Who was initiating this contract. So a little later, 2 years later, there was a Kyoto Protocol, and it was a great success because it was signed by 84 countries. And all the news and media were happy celebrating that from now on, the situation is taken care, so we don't need to worry. And then in 2008, there was another great success from news media, which was Copenhagen Summit. And later on, the most famous one is 2015, which is called Paris Agreement, where scientists decided that in order to prevent the detrimental changes to our biosphere, we need to limit our actions to 2 degrees change according to pre-industrial time. Or if we would be very hardworking and ambitious, we could even decrease it to 1.5 Celsius degrees. So this is a big history of almost 33 years of political changes. And from scientific point of view, when we make any changes to the system, we expect results. And as experimentalist working in the lab, I would expect some changes in the curve. So if all these efforts were taken to limit the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, the question is why it hasn't been decreased. So it's been steady increasing, and the growth and the rate of this growth is really alarming. That was known before, and it's still happening today. And for today, the latest results for yesterday, I checked, the concentration of CO2 was already 415 milligrams per liter of CO2. And already today, it means that we are above 1.2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial time. So the window in between we have time to act with all our business actions is getting even more narrow, because if the target 1.5, it's only 0.3 degrees. If it is 2, it's a little bit more. It means that we have a little bit more time, but do we have this time? That's the question. And their new scientific paper was just published, I think, 1 week ago. So it is written by Zhu et al. And published in 2021, which says that they recalculated the models that were predicting how much we shall set our efforts. And they say that basically by 2100, the changes up to 2.3 degrees are unavoidable. And where they come from? They come from the legacy of all the emissions that have been already put into the atmosphere. And this legacy is called committed warming. So if you imagine a car, it's running on the very fast speed and then suddenly stops. It will never stop immediately. There will still be some time to stop. And this time is called committed warming. So it's basically time to take for environment to recover from all the carbon and other greenhouse gases that have been emitted already by today. At one point is very disappointing that all the targets are a little bit meaningfulness now, because there is no doubt that the temperature will change and all the climate conditions will change. But the question, as always in chemistry, is the speed, is the rate of this change. So even though this is impossible to change, we can slow down. And this is our target and goal, to slow down this change. Because when we give nature some time to react to our pollution, it can recover itself because of the biogeochemical cycles. But what is happening right now is that our actions or our pollution is much faster than the rates of nature to recover. So it means that what we have to do is to slow down our carbon cycle and basically start carbon zero net emissions already today. And something that I wanted to highlight as being biogeochemist and being familiar with scientific literature, that unfortunately, to my understanding, the scientists already wrote about these questions concerning the sustainability of the world due to environmental challenges already a century ago. And one of the first scientists was Russian scientist Vladimir Ivanovich Vernadsky, who wrote his book Biosphere in many languages. First it was published in French, then in English, and only then in Russian. But basically then he already said that we are exceeding the limits of our planet to have a fruitful conditions for us and for nature. But nevertheless, it was not taken seriously into account. Later on, in 1972, there was groups of scientists in the MIT University in the States who also wrote a mathematical model. Not also because in 1926 there was no mathematical model, but in 1972 there was a first mathematical model showing that actually the rate with what we are exposing our nature is exceeding the rate that the nature can recover. So it's basically that human cycle is much faster than biogeochemical cycles of nature. To me, this means that there is some miscommunication or a gap of communication between scientific society and political society, because all has been known, but the actions what have been taken, well, they're not very successful. We don't see any changes on this graphic of CO2 concentration. And for those who just think that maybe 1-2 degrees is not much because it doesn't really sound significant, yeah, I wanted to show that this change is about 100 milligrams per liter of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And last time this change was caused ice age. So right now we are going to opposite trend. But can you imagine drastic changes in environmental conditions just by going beyond 2 degrees or 100 ppm of carbon dioxide? So whenever you listen to news or reports, they always use this terminology of 1 or 2 degrees. And I hope that now you are clear what it means. And as I mentioned, to my point of view, there is a miscommunication. And basically what is causing the major misconceptions about sustainable business. So the first is, I think, the question of rise of renewables. What we can hear from political agenda and also from news and TV is that we all have to switch to renewables. And from the scientific and technological point of view, it is really reasonable, no question. It's a great technology that is producing energy and which is not committing the carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases during its exploitation. Of course, over its life cycle, there are emissions, but at least when we compare it to other sources of energy, it looks like environmental friendly. And the idea was that it shall be like additional source of energy, or how to say, so that we can use, for example, to get the energy for houses or for remote places. For example, in Tibet, in temples on the roofs, they already put solar panels. And I think this is a really great achievement to use solar panels for remote regions, or for the regions where people do not consume as much energy as, for example, at the technological plants or cement factories. So this is something for not very energy demanding. And the initial idea and concept from science and technology ended up in something very different. So what we can see now is that there are many drawbacks about the solar panels, for example. The energy production depends on weather, and it is not sustainable itself because we have dynamics, and the more we have climate change, the less predictable energy we can produce by solar panels. Also, to build these panels, we need to use critical raw materials which are non-renewable. And also, mining for these metals, they are causing the loss of biodiversity. And this finding was just recently published last year in 2020, showing that renewable energy production actually exacerbate mining threats to biodiversity. And beyond the other drawbacks, what we can see is how the solar panels are used nowadays. They're covering the entire fields, and you can see this photo, and on the background you can see beautiful mountains. But basically all this natural habitat is taken out of the nature to be covered by these panels. And on the right you can see the forest in China and its plans to build the world's biggest solar panel fields in the shape of panda. I don't know if it is a joke, but they consider it is environmental friendly, but it is nothing similar to the initial scientific and technological development of the renewable energy. Natural forests and natural habitats shall not suffer from the using such environmentally friendly energy sources. So the idea here is that from very beginning, from the scientific knowledge, again to the business and political measures, there is some misunderstanding or misconception, as we have seen them before. I have another example of digitalization and digital economy. For example, phones. They are not causing much in terms of the carbon footprint. One iPhone is about 1 ton or 1.5 tons of the carbon dioxide to produce, which is not big. It's actually just two and a half flights from London to New York. So it's fine. When you consider that just one device can be used instead of many different devices like GPS navigation or maps. For example, maps, they require paper. For example, GPS navigation, they require other metals and plastics to be produced. We also use phones instead of TVs, scanners and printers, cameras, alarm clock, voice recorders, calculators. Some of you may still remember that like 20 years ago, when we didn't have such phones, we would have all these different equipment at home and at work. So it was a very demanding for the materials that we needed to use for such devices. And now just one small device, which does not consume a lot of materials, can substitute all of this. So this was the idea of the digital economy. But what we can see is that basically human nature or our cultural way of thinking is that once we are getting more, we want more. This is our nature. It's hard to limit ourselves. And if before, for example, we would use less TV, less cameras, less voice recordings and everything else, so now we are using it all the time. And it has additional carbon footprint. So it's not only the carbon footprint to produce the device, it's also the way how we use it. So for example, one text message is just a little bit of greenhouse gas emissions. 1 minute of call is already a few grams. And 1 gigabyte of internet is already 3 kilograms of carbon dioxide. And now take a moment to think how much everyone is using it every day. And this demand is only increasing. So that it was calculated, for example, from some IT companies like Netflix, carbon footprint is already equal to the biggest cement company in France. So this is also misconception and miscommunication, how initially the science and technology were aiming to solve the sustainability issues. This is not the last example. I have to tell you one more, and I hope you won't depressed so much during this class. So the next is about the experience of USSR. We had a unique experience in former Russia, where we had great technological solutions. And even though they were not driven by the goal of sustainability, they were purely driven by the economic efficiency. So that the all technological development that happened, it was to avoid extra expenses for extra materials, for extra waste. And we already had resource efficiency, recycling, modularity, and zero waste technologies, eco-industrial parks. It was the greatest experience so far in the world. And actually nowadays we call it circular economy. That time we didn't have this word, but all the technological solutions were already implemented. But even though it was circular economy, it was not a sustainable development. And this is something to remember for those who are only thinking about technological achievements or solutions, that circular economy is only part of sustainable development. Because what we need actually is a cultural shift, which was not in the USSR. And basically, the sustainable development just cannot be based on the eco-friendly technologies. They are not simply enough, and we need a cultural shift towards conscious ecosystem design, so that every business company, its employees and clients and investors, so that everyone has a global common goal that could be transparent, so that only in this way the sustainable situation could be achieved. And with our experts from this school, with Professor Daria Gerasimenko from Switzerland, we wrote a book chapter in the Handbook of the Circular Economy, where we took this example of the USSR, where we had the circular economy, but we didn't have sustainable development. And if you have free time, this should be open source. The chapter is called Refurbishing Circular Economy Concept in Russia, from Industrial Policy Towards Innovation by Co-Creation. So on this, I would like to summarize the first part and to discuss with you, to open this discussion floor, why business often gets sustainability wrong. And what I tried to demonstrate to you so far, there are a few reasons. And of course, it is specific to different business companies. But what we can summarize, probably the first reason is that we don't see big picture. And there is some misconception of common goals. There are still short-term plannings for each business company and unfortunately for the government as well. There is a clear communication gap between scientists and politicians, so that initially designed scientifically based technologies, they are just used wrongly. The old economic models, when ecosystem services considered free and not essential, when economic is something decoupled from other systems. And these systems are both social and environmental. The other reason is that we push too much on technological solutions, but we don't make enough effort to cultural changes. And being a scientist, I see that a lot of innovations has already been developed in technologies, but due to some reasons, we are not applying them. So the other reason, there are other guesses why business is getting sustainability wrong is because some business companies, they care only about economic profits. The others can care only about environmental problems. And even if you have the best environmental friendly technologies, it's not enough to become a sustainable company. You also have to make sure that there are needs covered for the present and future generations. And sometimes it's only about social problems. And in general, since it is a developing field, there is not enough interdisciplinary experts to fill these positions in the developing business companies who already want to integrate changes. So for now, I would like to offer you to work a little bit in groups and discuss, first of all, let's see how many of us here. All right, so we are 14. Let me think. Let's make 4 groups. And in these groups, I will ask you to think who will be taking notes on your discussion, and the same person will report it to other class members. And the topic of discussion will be why business often gets sustainability wrong. Maybe you can add something else to this list, or if you don't know what to end, maybe you can offer some examples of these lists of the problems. All right, I think right now you can ask questions if the task was clear or not clear. So before splitting into groups, I give you the chance to ask.
Kate, I have a question regarding the slide and the information where you showed the dynamic of the level of CO2 emission. And there are the ones which are the highest way, and then there is a drop. What is the drop means? The reduction of the emission and how that happens, or what is it?
All right.
So why it's not growing all the time? Why it's like
over 1 million of years, I think, right? So there were large dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah. And why it's going down? Because something I don't know happened, like frozen or whatever, like all people were dead.
Well,
why
it's a
that
great
happen?
question. In this cycle of carbon, there are different sources and sinks. So it's basically to say that carbon is always either in one place or another. And the content is always the same. It's just the question where it is in the atmosphere or in the soil, for example. And in the soil, it stays in the biomass shape. And the simple biomass is the tree, forest, or algae in the ocean. So all the biomass and us as human, we also contain carbon. And sometimes it's just we have more biomass on the land or in the ocean, so it uptakes all the carbon from the atmosphere. But then when there are, due to some natural reasons, and there are cycles in the earth of warming and cooling the systems, that the geochemical balance is changing, and it started releasing CO2 as a gas to the atmosphere. So it's either way, either in the atmosphere or in the soil or in the ocean. And the question is where it will be more stable. And the stable, of course, it's in the form of the biomass or even fuel. Our, how it is called, the coal, it is all the biomass. So right now we are burning all carbon that was stored in the solid state and making gas out of it. And it's coming to the atmosphere. But it has been stored in the solid state as first as a biomass, then in the lithosphere, and then finally getting in the shape of the carbon coal that we are burning right now as a fossil fuels. It's been taking about 15 million of years. Of course, different in different climatic zones because it's governed by physical-chemical conditions. So basically, the cycle of Earth could be considered like 15 millions, for example, for the cycle from solid to gaseous state. But what humanity is doing, we basically speed up the cycle. So what was long stored in the soil now is released to the atmosphere, where carbon CO2 is the most mobile. And the next effort shall be to take back from atmosphere to the soil. And it may seem a little bit fantastic, but it's actually very easy to do because our plants and trees, they are growing because they're consuming the CO2. And this is the building structure. So that's how the many projects right now in Europe are developing for regenerative business. It means not only not to harm, it's not only to decrease emissions, but also to uptake from the atmosphere. And this is one of the next goals, how to convert. Or for example, also I heard that in cement technologies, they also uptake CO2 emissions and create solid carbon. So it's also something to look at. But the idea is either it's in the gaseous or solid state.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope it answered your question. But anyway,
I would
yeah. Someone else?
Can I ask a few questions, please?
Yes.
I have a bad internet connection, so I switched my camera off. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Firstly, I would like to ask, how can we share the information that we learned here? What about the authors' rights? Can we take copies of presentation and so on? Could you please comment on it?
Yes, I will briefly answer this question. You will get the presentations after every class. You will get these slides, so you will have this. You may still keep doing notes, but don't rush because you will have all this information provided. And the second question on authorship. Authorship belongs to the speakers and experts who are presenting the lectures. So you are not allowed to share it, but you can mention it with the reference to the school and to the expert's name.
Thank you very much. So I would also ask a question concerning the presentation. We see that regardless of sustainable policies and a lot of sustainable strategies, we still are moving to 3 degrees rise by 2100 year. And I would like to ask, is it real to stop the changes, or we're just moving to?
All right, it's a tricky question.
Bright future.
Yeah, I think I've got your question. It's a very tricky. What I want to say is what we can change is the rate of this change. What is more important in the cycles of our planet is the rates of biogeochemical cycles. And the most dangerous what human is doing is increasing the speed of these rates. So what scientists published just about 1 week ago is saying that the increase is inevitable. So it will happen anyway, but the changes in the climate system will depend on how fast it will change. So if it will change over the century, maybe it will be less dramatic for human and for nature, rather than if we don't change anything right now, and this race will happen within next 10 years, such rapid changes can cause already detrimental effects. So what we can do now is just to slow down change, but we cannot, for now, for this century, we cannot decrease this value because there is a legacy time. And this legacy of previously emitted carbon dioxide is not just what we are producing today, it's for the entire century that has been produced before. So there is legacy time for response for changing biogeochemical cycles. And we have to help nature by creating these regenerative projects. But this will be a help just to slow down the rate. And this is what we can hope for.
Yeah, I would also add to this question a little bit positive note. So this is the topic of tomorrow's lecture about the policies. So potentially we can keep us under the 3-degree pathway, but we need to strengthen in an order of ways. So the first one is to strengthen our policies, to make it more regulatory based and scientific based. And the next one is make the bold actions from the side of the business. So in this case, we can keep us under the 3 degrees pathway.
Yeah, I'm sure we can at least slow down this trend. And for now, I would like to start group discussions. So you will be split into groups automatically. If someone will stay in this room, we will take care of you, don't worry. But in ideal case, it shall happen automatically. And please introduce yourself. Say your name, say your industry or area of interests, and just discuss why business gets sustainability wrong. Maybe there are some other reasons, or maybe you can you can show some examples to us that you already seen in your life. So, and then, yeah, please, someone shall take note so that when we all together come back, someone will present and briefly discuss what you discussed. And for this, we will have, I think, 10 minutes for discussion and then about 10 minutes for joint classroom.
I'm sorry. Could I ask for to send in WhatsApp, for example, last slide where the reasons and where the task was written?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great.
Or it's better without it?
No, it's better with it. It's just a great idea. I will make it right now. So I think I will split you into groups, and while you will be introducing yourself to each other, I will send the image of the slide with the reasons that we have so far to WhatsApp chat. Sounds good?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go. Welcome back. I hope you had a nice journey, and so you've had a chance a little bit to know more about each other, and later on we will keep going with group activities. So how were your discussions, and if you decided who will be presenting on behalf of your group, that would be great. Does anyone want to start?
Yep, hello. I'm Tara. I'm from the UK, and I was in a group with Anastasia and Dasha, and we talked kind of around the point about why businesses often get sustainability wrong because they care only about economic profits. That was one week we kind of centered our discussion off, and we talked a lot about how there's a lot of businesses usually have like a selfish goal of, you know, making you buy the product. So that's their ultimate goal, a lot of them. And so they'll entice you with buy one, get one free offers and kind of manipulate the consumer's mind. But that they're always targeting from the consumer point of view rather than from like the ethics and sustainable point of views. So yeah, there's always a pressure to buy stuff, even though we really need like a minimalistic approach. And we said, can you hear the kettle, sorry, or is that okay? If it's okay, I'll continue. Yeah, and we said that there's a lot of greenwashing going on in businesses like H&M, where they've got sustainable fashion lines, but then also the majority of their work is still unsustainable and still not paying their garment workers enough or using low quality materials. And then we kind of went on to the point that a lot of businesses maybe are still getting it wrong because they're trying to do it themselves without talking to like sustainability advisors and people that actually know what they're talking about. And I think a lot of businesses started doing that just because they wanted to get involved in the conversation and are now realizing that they actually need help from scientists and advisors to ensure that they can approach it in a sustainable way. And then we kind of went on to how Europe tends to concentrate more on the social benefits and are maybe starting to become a bit more environmentally friendly in approaches. But it also has to be a systemic approach, like it can't just be a few countries, all countries have to come together in order to move forward. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great discussion. I think you covered all important issues. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed your conversation with the classmate. Do we have someone else who is ready to present?
Yes, I could present.
Yes, please.
I was in a group with Roman and Leona, and we focused a bit on this communication between politics and businesses topic, because we figure there's a misunderstanding of what sustainability is, mostly on the business side, where sustainability is also not very profitable and short term for many businesses, which is also a problem which is created by missing incentive schemes from policymakers, where they tout that sustainability is important, but then do not create the tax schemes or the tradable emission permits, which would make sustainability also economically profitable. And on the business side, we then have people who studied economics or international business administration or something like this, and they figure, well, we're not going to do something that's not profitable for our business. So there's this gap between what policymakers want the businesses to do and what the businesses actually do. And this gap needs to be filled, in our opinion, with incentive schemes, policies, and stuff like tradable emission permits. But also on the business side, we need people who are educated not only in economics and business, but also in sustainability or social policy, stuff like this.
Well, great. Thank you very much. Indeed, there is a big gap, and let's hope that with our help it will be fulfilled between business and the implementation practices from government. someone else who wants to share?
Yes, I can share.
Yes, please.
Yes. We had a team with Olga, and we actually agree with the speakers who presented the speech before. And as a part of the business myself, I can say that for today, sustainability is not really a profitable thing, and we are not limited by the government or by any restrictions. Currently, I'm talking about Russia at this moment. Like business doesn't have any restrictions for business development in terms of the ecology. And from the historic part, the business and the policy is very much connected. That's why all the political rules and system is actually developed for gaining kind of like to grow economy, to grow business, industry, to gain profit and money. And this question actually was never the main question of the industry and the business. And for today, it's actually like sustainability becomes kind of expensive for the business as well. That's why they are thinking about it, but it's difficult for industry to change the mindset and all the structure of the business like right away, even if you understand it. As you said, there is a path from the start to the actual implementation of this. And unfortunately, it will take time. And the business actually need to have like educated people in this area, so that to try to develop not only the economical and the marketing part of the business, developing the strategy of the company in like sustainable strategy, but as well the technological thing if it's industrial organization. And it also takes knowledge, like money sources, investment in new technologies or new approach, and people.
Thank you very much for sharing. And hopefully my second part of the lecture today will a little bit answer some of your questions about, maybe not financially today, because we have a special class on financial opportunities for companies going for sustainable models. But today I just will show you the piece of information that it's not necessarily has to be expensive to the companies, because there are different levels of action. And just a word of sustainable business, it's sometimes is getting more fear than it is, because there are several different methods and levels of actions, and already start with something that is not costing your business, but already creating the positive impact. It's already possible. And during the school, you will learn about these methods. So I hope that maybe after the school, you will be inspired to change something in your business.
Good.
And do we have someone else?
Yes, from our group.
All right, please.
Yeah. So my name is Dimas. I come from Indonesia, and I used to work at branding consultant of marketing division, whereas I met a lot of companies that, how I wanted to say, that they try to pretend themselves that they want to be seen as a company who has tendencies to be sustainable, so they can brand themselves to be like green companies and such. So what we have discussed in our groups, I think we are all agreed that the most bizarre and like the biggest sin of all that is that they have priorities set wrong. So once again they want to be seen as a company that sustainable, but they do not have culture. They do not have company culture that support that. So what it means is that uh, once again they just want to be seen from the market side, that uh, they want to get as much as economic profits, but they don't actually care about uh, the the real side of being sustainable. So I think that's the, from my experience and from my group's whole discussion, I think it's the one point that is very, very dangerous. And the second point is that uh, when we talk about cultural changes of the company, it actually depends on the general culture in the said country. For example, my country, it's actually do not, it's actually it's like not uh, it's not common to for like companies, I mean small companies, to have uh, to be like prioritize themselves to be sustainable. But I do not know about the other countries. But at least from our country, Indonesia, for small companies, it's not quite common to have uh, a culture that support small business to be sustainable. So I think that's one of the main point, that cultural changes, culture of the company, it actually depend on the general culture of the country itself. So yeah, I think that's those 2 points represent our discussion.
Thank you very much for this sum up. And I think, or I personally believe, that everyone can make a change, and your business company can start this change. And even though maybe nowadays it's not popular to hear about the sustainable business in Indonesia, you can start transmitting this message. And if everyone will start, even I think small business has this opportunity to make a shift in the culture of one city or one region or entire country. All right, I think for now everyone shared the sum ups of the discussions, and I offer you a short break, about 10 minutes, so, or maybe even 15 minutes. Does it sound good for you? Yeah, so let's meet 1:30, whatever time it is in your zone. All right, see you soon.
Okay, see you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm trying to find the best way how to show you the screen. Let me try it second time. All right, maybe I'll do it as I did it before.
The first time we demonstrate, there would be a full screen and we see very well. We saw very well.
Just a second. All right. I will learn how to deal with it. What I want you to do for now, after a short break, is to close your eyes and to imagine a nice place where you feel good, relaxed, and at the same time full of energy. You feel healthy and positive. Look around yourself. Try to imagine where is this place where you feel good and relaxed, but always full of energy. And now, before you open your eyes, raise your hand if this place is somewhere in nature. All right, don't put it back. Now open your eyes. Now still keep your hand if it was it was raised. Okay, so I would say about 80% of you imagine the happy place where we feel full and relaxed, but at the same time full of energy. It's nature, and that's the way how business is going to see in the near future itself. So it should be a safe place where we have lots of energy and opportunities. And what we have seen so far in the business management in the different MBA programs since 1980s, it is what we call business as usual, when business is mainly concerns about its economic ecosystem. And it is about suppliers, buyers, different entrants, substitutes. And what is proposed for the modern economy is to see business within other ecosystems. And other ecosystems could be social or environmental. But the key point is that business is not only the part of it, it depends on its environments. And basically, in the big picture, we want to see that we have a shift from the self-contained market to embedded economy. And I think many of you have seen these different options of the triple bottom line aspects. And I just would like to offer you to imagine how it was before. It was shareholder value, where the business was considering environment and society as tools, but not necessarily depending on them, or like in the first economic model, it was considered they're infinities. So they were a little bit out of this economical model. And the next step was shared value, where business, environment, and society were put in the triple bottom line concept. And basically what was called sustainability was the intercept between the three of them. But at some point of view, it did not describe the sustainability concept in full, because it means that it only partially depends or contribute or impact the society and environment. And what we can see now is within the biophysical limits of the planet, the business is within the other systems. So that business cannot exist without people working for this business, and people cannot exist without the environment that provides us essential ecosystem services. So this simple idea of vision, how we present our intentions and goals, is very clear, I think, on this plot. So from now on, we will be speaking about the systems thinking, the systems that business is within the other systems. And during this school, you will have, I think, more than 2 classes on the systems thinking and how you can apply it to business. So what are the basic ecosystem services? And they include air, which limits our existence. And basically we cannot live without the air. Some people can keep it long, but in average, it's 3 minutes that we cannot stand longer without air. It's water, average 3 days, and food, which should be nutritious, 3 weeks. So do we value these ecosystem services? Modern business demonstrates that we don't really put price on this, but let's try to put price to understand how valuable it is to us. For example, water. Tap cold water is not very expensive, and if you live in a like apartment, or if your business is running an office in a high-story building, it's about $20 per month. It could be more, it could be less. But then nowadays we don't like tap cold water. Many companies just for their clients and for the offices buy bottled water. So it's becoming more expensive, and here is the price of water, which is considered free to everyone. Then air, nowadays with the pandemic, we have fines for not wearing masks. So to some extent, we can say that we have to pay for breathing air without the mask. And in China, there is a clean air that you can buy in a canned bottles. And there is a price. It's of course depend on the volume of this can, but in average is from $20 to $50 per can. So there is already price for basic ecosystem services. And if we think about the International Space Station, we can think about place which is home for just 6 people. And it costs about I think it costs about 600 billion in average. And when we divide it by amount of people, we can estimate that the cost of basic services is 100 billion per person. And what do they have on this International Space Station? In terms of the ecosystem services, they don't have much. They just have fresh air, and they have the beginnings of simple water cycle. But they don't even grow their own food, and they do not recycle much. So there are great limitations for humanity to reconstruct these basic ecosystem services that we take for granted and make business out of them when we sell water and air. And in the global situation, let's take a look at the ecological footprint. So this is the global map, and you can see by color code the different zones or countries where the biocapacity is already exceeding the number of people living in this country. So for example, China or other countries, you can see that they are using much more natural resources than there is that the nature can provide for this amount of people in this specific period of time. And in some places where it is green, it means that there is still some biocapacity left, so they can use these resources. I want to warn you that this map could be very misleading, because this is based on the number of people living in the country. All right, before this, I wanted to invite you, when you have free time, to play with the map and to see your country. So it will show the biocapacity per person and ecological footprint per person. And as a result, you will see the biocapacity. Is it over or under the limit? Is it reserve or is it deficit? And then you can discuss if your business relies on these resources. But this is what I offer you to do at your free time. And now I just wanted to show that this map is good for big picture, but likely this is giving us a little bit misleading information. Because we have digitalization, so the carbon footprint or the other resources are being used at one place, but the product is used in another place. For example, carbon offsetting methods. When we buy different credits from countries, from other places, we need to respect their natural biocapacity. Otherwise, it's all getting mixed up. And in average, scientists say that today humanity uses already too much resources. In general, it's about 2 planets. Earth is 1.75. That's what is needed to fulfill the needs of current generation. And if you imagine, for example, for 1 year, it should be 1 planet. So now we can say that we are exceeding by almost a half each of us, the limits of the biocapacity of the planet. It means that we already, each of us, in depth from the Earth. And basically, if we are planning to have family, we will go into even more depths. So we cannot allow ourselves to have big families because there is just simply not enough resources for that. And the scientists decided to make a framework and basically to identify indicators, scientific indicators that would tell us how far we are from this exceeding the limits of the planet. And this concept is called planetary boundaries. And it was published in 2009 by a group of scientific experts, leading experts from Norway and Australia. Not Norway, I think Sweden. But what they say is basically that there are different planetary boundaries that we need to take into account. It's not only climate change that is affecting all of us. Besides, there are other boundaries like loss of biodiversity, or stratospheric ozone depletion, or atmospheric pollution, or ocean acidification, biochemical fluxes of nitrogen and phosphorus, which are coming mainly from the fertilizers, so from agriculture and from our dishwashing machines and laundries. Also, it's freshwater use and land system change. So all these boundaries are crucial to keep our biosphere healthy so that humanity, society, and the business can thrive within. And by now, it's been calculated that already 4 boundaries are exceeded. It's climate change that we hear very often, but most importantly, it is loss of biodiversity and the changes in the biogeochemical cycles of nitrogen and phosphorus. Again, we don't hear a lot about these kind of planetary boundaries, but still it is important to understand that all of them are interconnected. So that climate change affects the biogeochemical fluxes because all these fluxes are temperature dependent and vice versa. So it's a close interconnection between the ecosystem. And we need to operate within this safe operating space. And when we build our business strategies, we need to account if somehow we put in danger or impact these boundaries. So by showing this, I just wanted to highlight that it's not only climate change that we have to think or take into account, but other planetary boundaries. And there are many, many scientific tools to apply to business, how you can calculate it. And when we are speaking about the planet, we are speaking about the closed system. So it's a system that is limited to growth. It's been so many millions of years that it had the same capacity. As we just discussed in the first part, the amount is the same. So its carbon, for example, is not changing. What is changing, it's concentrations in different parts of the biosphere. And when it's changing, it may limit our existence because, for example, we can eat biomass, but we cannot build biomass from carbon dioxide as plants do it through photosynthesis. So it's really important in what state we have these cycles. And here on the graph, you can see the timeline over which we have the population growth. And I think most of you know that right now we are about 7.7 billion people on the planet, and we are expected to grow by 11 billion by the end of the century. So we can see this line very often, which demonstrates that the population is growing, and it means that the impact to the resources is also growing. And that by now only half of the nature is left untouched, whereas about 25% is taken for agriculture, specifically for meat production, 12% for crops, and cities are taking only a minor part of this land use. And what I wanted to show here is also the second graph, which you can see by this line, is the annual growth rate. Remember, I was telling you that it's not necessarily the last, the key, the goal is important. For example, with carbon dioxide, it's important the rate of changes. And here we see that the rate of these changes is changing. So it was increasing first, and now it's dropping. And from one side, it is caused by the fact that right now families are smaller because of the women education about the sex and protection. And on the other side, environmentalists say that there is a decline in the growth of the population because of the bad environmental conditions. So here, I just wanted to show you, as promised, my photo from Germany from 2010. So it was 10 years ago. When I look at this curve of the growth of population, it reminds me about the bacterial growth in my beakers, because I was working in the laboratory. And when you imagine the experimental flask, it's basically the same closed system as our planet. It's just whatever I put in the beginning of the experiment to feed my bacteria, bacteria doesn't have more. It doesn't come from the space, so it is limited. And I could clearly see in my flasks this curve. Like in the beginning, I put some live bacteria so that there is some time and they can double in time, and it takes time. So it's not momentarily they start using all the resources they have. And the same we can see here. Then it starts really growing super fast. And this log phase is called exponential growth. And this is what is the humanity is experiencing now. And this normally is followed by stationary phase when the population is leveled up. And this is due to different reasons, but in my flasks, in the closed system, this is due to the limited resources. And I think we are often forgetting that our planet is finite, that is also a closed system. And what is important to see here is that after stationary phase, we have the death phase. And I think this is what misunderstood by the policy makers, that the actions have to be taken somewhere here, but not here, because it will be too late. And it's not only about the amount of bacteria, it's about the quality of this bacteria, or easy to say, about the health of bacteria. And it is known fact that in the beginning, you can see this purple color. The all new cells are very live and full of energy. And then at the end of the exponential growth, there are only live creatures that are dividing at the very high speed. And at the middle of stationary phase, there is already some part of this is dead or sick cells that cannot reproduce themselves. And by the end, it's changing ratios from healthy to sick cells until all of them won't die. So it is known in microbiology, and it's clear to scientists, but to some extent, this, I think, not clearly communicated that we are also living in this closed system. And I just want to explain you in very easy terms what it means exponential growth. Some of you may know it, but anyway, I think it's a funny exercise. So as I said, exponential growth is basically doubling. Every cell is doubling at any time. So every time it's, it is normally shown in logarithmic scale because it's doubling that fast. And let's imagine a situation. You have a house, and by the house you have a small pond. And you want to grow beautiful lilies as flowers in this pond. And lilies are beautiful, but not when they cover the entire space of the pond, because lilies, they have a high surface area of their leaves. And when there are too many lilies, when they cover the entire surface of the pond, they limit the access of light, of oxygen, and other nutrients to the rest of the lake. So the lake is dying. And in general, imagine that it takes 30 days for the lilies to fill entirely the space of the pond. So my question to you is, on which day the half of the lake surface will be covered by lilies? Because what we see in the politics is that normally the actions are being taken only when the half, the half, I would say, impact can be observed. And then we see, okay, it's too bad enough, we have to deal with it immediately. But before, it doesn't seem too much. It doesn't seem that we have to be bothered by the problem. So I stop sharing my screen now, and I'd like to ask you, on what day the half of the pond will be filled with lilies if the entire pond will be filled after 30 days? Any guesses are welcome.
I have one. I suppose it would be 29th day.
29th day.
Because there would be some kind of replication, yes, and some flowers must doubling, yes.
All right.
Must double, yes, double.
Thank you for answer. Any other guesses? So in terms of the politics, when we have to start action, when we see that the half of pond is already taken by these beautiful flowers?
Ideally earlier than the 29th day.
So just a second. Yes, you're right. It's about the theory of the exponential growth that says that the half will be filled just one day before it will be filled the entire pond. So that's the rule of exponential growth. And what the key message this example tells us is that the exponential growth may seem unproblematic or manageable so that we can still take actions, but suddenly in one day, it becomes too late to do anything about the problem. So that's what happens. And right now, it looks like we don't really acting like we are experiencing this exponential growth. And what we can see is recently, I think in December 2020, there were news in UK that there was a in the first time, air pollution was listed among causes of death of British girl. And this case was in the discussion during 7 years. So the case happened much earlier, I think in, well, 7 years ago, right? And there were fights about what would be written in the death certificate. Is it air pollution or there are other health complications as it is normally written in the death certificate? So this was breaking news just months ago. And basically what it says by the end of this article is that Britain has pledged to ban the sale of gas and diesel cars and vans by 2030. So this is what action is proposed to help with this problem. But I'm afraid what we could see in the reality that if we ban these kind of cars, it means that we will need to replace them, right? And replace, a new trend is to replace by the electric cars. And this is not always the best case because sustainable business, it does not relate to entire industry or just a single methodology. It is on the based, company's based case. So for example, Tesla is considered not the best sustainable case or even worse. And other electric cars like Volt or Renault or BMW are considered more sustainable. But what we see in the news and in politics, we tend to see generalizations. All renewables are better than fossil fuels. All electric cars are better than other gas or diesel cars. It has to be considered specifically to the conditions and the systems in which this technology exists. So it is different for different climates, for countries, for cultures, for technologies. And I hope that from today's class, you will remember that when we speak about sustainable business, it's dangerous to speak about sustainable industry because it is always specific to specific strategies of this company. And these news were not that breaking as it could seem, because the death from the air pollution has been worldwide over many years. It just hasn't been advertised in the news, and also it was not written in the death certificate. But in fact, World Health Organization say that 9 million people per year die from air pollution. And this is 2 times more than all the deaths combined from HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis. And this is equal about 2,000 airplanes crashing per 1 hour. So today during our class is an enormous amount of death just to air pollution. And this is something that we also can see here. It's a number of deaths by risks. So that here in the first risk, we have the blood pressure, but already fourth is air pollution. You remember we mentioned the obesity in the beginning. It was, I think, yeah, just after the air pollution. And if you're a drug user, you have much higher chances to survive rather than living in the highly polluted cities. So all this information is available in science for many years, but unfortunately is miscommunicated to the politics, I think. And what we can see now is a new type of economy that tries to build its way towards global changes. And this economy is called donut economy, which finally respects the biophysical capacity of the planet and tries to feed the modern economy within these limits, understanding that there are limits to growth and understanding that there is a biocapacity limit of the planet. You may find more information in the book or at the website. It's called Donut Economy, and it was published in 2017. But basically what it says is that this green circle, it has shape of the donut, like the snack. And the new economy says that it is a goal of the business not make anyone fall into the hole inside of the donut and to fall outside of this donut. So basically the inside space is social foundation. So it's the gender equality, is networks, is about health, education, peace and justice. So these are the inner boundaries of this donut. And everyone has to be taken care not to fall out of this donut. And on the outer sphere or outer boundaries, there are environmental boundaries. And these are the 9 planetary boundaries that we just have seen 5 minutes ago. So the good news that new economists and new politicians, they already consider these new types of economies. Maybe it is not that popular yet, but it is coming, and I see that this is really opening opportunities for our businesses to be sustainable. And for this, we need to set new goals for new growth. And basically, as I think all of you noticed, that we need some cultural changes and basically the meaning, what it means, the new growth. And it's not only about economic profits, it's also about increasing trust to your business or to creating greater equity or healthier lives or creating richer ecosystems. So these new types of thinking is defining new goals and new growth for business as a future direction. And I believe that everyone has a role in sustainability. So sustainability is just the development, it's just one point at a time, but already now scientists say that there is much beyond the sustainable development, and it's called regenerative development. And I hope that the next school will be based on the regenerative development. But basically what you can see that the conventional way how we do our business is degenerating system. And the next step is to come to green. And it means that basically we start asking, do we impact on environment? Do we depend, are we depend on the environment? So the green, it means we just start wondering, but not really acting. Then the sustainable business is basically when we do not harm. And then from that point, we can go beyond and also create the business in the way that it will be restorative and finally regenerative. And of course, there are many steps through which business can evolve. And also we can think about it. So by changing the business model, we're also changing the way we think about it. And for example, when the business as usual tend to think that resources are infinite, then we start thinking that there is, we need efficient resources or the use of resources. Then we need to conserve resources. Then we need to think that we are part of the nature and our part is, and our business is part of the nature. So it's within the systems. And then we try to mimic nature, then restore nature, then tend to be nature, and finally be the nature. So there is a long path, but I hope that we are on the good track. And to finalize today's class, I just wanted again to show you that there is a lot of opportunities to go beyond to sustainability and beyond the sustainability, but we need to integrate human consciousness. And from ego come to eco, from anthropocentric to biocentric. And there is much more information that I would love to share, but I think that's good enough for today. And I hope that I could evolve your attitude to this topic through critical thinking, through pessimistic scenarios, to optimistic strategies that we have right now already today. And each of you has the opportunity, but also the responsibility to change the world. And by joining this school, I hope that we can do it together. By this, I would like to finish the class and just to summarize that I hope everyone has a program. Check it regularly. And if you don't have it, I think we will post it one more time in chat, so you won't miss it. And we also have the roadmap of our classes and experts. And it will help us to guide you step by step through these two magic and exciting weeks. I'm looking forward to go through this journey with you. And we now can say that the first step is done. So congratulations to you on the first day. I know it was long, but I hope it was interesting and useful. And you will see the references and some additional materials to read in your free time. And that's it for today. Let's see if you have questions.
Thank you, that was so helpful. I really enjoyed that. I had a question, I'm not sure if you saw it, I popped it in the chat. It was about when you were on about the air pollution. I know you said about the case in the UK. Is that data from all over the world, or is it found that it's worse in developed countries, obviously where there's more cars like UK and China, or is it still bad in places like India where they still use a lot of cars and motorcycles and things?
Well, we have to take a look at the map, and maybe it's not necessarily about the cars, it's also about the efficiency of technologies and how much is industrialized this country. Because, for example, Norway is highly industrialized, but it uses eco-friendly technologies, right? So yeah, maybe we can distinguish it between the types of technologies are prevalent, but by heart, I don't remember if we can distinguish it so easily.
Yeah, good point.
Anyone else has questions? All right, so then thank you very much for your attention. You did a great job. I think that the first day was the longest one. You made it. And you will receive this presentation, and also you will be asked to fill the feedback form, which is very important to us because it's our first school. We really need your honest feedback, and yeah, see you tomorrow.
Thanks a lot to you.
Thanks a lot, Katya.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow, guys.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
See
Bye-bye.
you tomorrow. Bye.